Welcome to Bible for Modern Minds podcast.
Today we're taking on a set of source documents that, honestly, they read less like history and more like an action thriller. This is the story of Ram Hassan, a man who, by all accounts, had a perfect life. High status, powerful family, huge career ahead of him in Yemen. And he chose to trade all of it for a hidden faith that carried a state-sanctioned death penalty.
That's exactly it. And these sources, they really get into the details of Ram's extraordinary transformation. You see the internal conflict of, holding this secret that could literally destroy his family, and then the operational reality of leading a secret community constantly under threat and, well, a seemingly impossible escape.
So our mission is pretty clear. We're going to unpack not just the story of his flight, but the profound psychological, the theological shifts that drove a respected executive to become a wanted fugitive. This is really about the high price of conviction.
And if you're trying to understand what makes someone just, fundamentally change their life's entire trajectory, shedding everything they've ever gained, these sources offer a truly singular insight.
Let's start with the setup then, the life he was risking. Ram Hassan was 43 when all of this really comes to a head. He was the youngest son of Ibrahim al-Hassan, a man with huge standing in their community. His older brother, Fard, was a high-ranking government official. This family was the establishment.
Exactly. Ram's past was, totally predetermined. He was going to be a pillar of the community, a devout scholar, someone who would just further the family name. And that pride really peaked when, at 32, the family sends him to London for a master's in international finance. For them, this is like validation on a global stage.
And London, of all places, becomes the very place where his loyalty to that path starts to unravel. He wasn't even looking for a spiritual shift, right?
Yeah.
He was pursuing a career in high finance.
Right.
So how does a student like that just stumble into something that challenges his entire worldview?
Well, it wasn't through some, academic debate or a class. It was a chance meeting. A casual thing with another student, Michael, who just invited him to a small Bible study. And the shift wasn't a slow burn. It was a sudden conceptual revelation.
And the sources are really specific about this part. What was the idea, the concept that was the breaking point for him?
It was the story of the prodigal son in the Gospel of Luke. See, Ram was raised to understand a God as distant, demanding, maybe even unattainable. A God whose favor you had to meticulously earn.
A God of justice.
A God of justice, exactly. But the prodigal son presented something completely radical. A father who's a stand-in for the divine, right? Who doesn't wait for the son to earn his way back. He sees the son while he was still a long way off, and he runs to him. He embraces him before any confession is even made.
That idea of a God who runs down to meet humanity instead of waiting for us to climb some ladder of rules up to him, that must have been a seismic shock.
It totally disarmed him. It was a contrast between a theology based on fear, on rules, on striving, versus a relationship based on unearned grace. But this shift, this beautiful idea, came with immediate, terrifying, real-world consequences. Ram knew perfectly well that in Yemen, apostasy leaving Islam is punishable by death.
So he comes back home in 2011. He has his finance degree, but he also has this explosive secret. He steps right back into his manager role at a bank. And now he's living this 7-year double life right under the nose of his own powerful family.
And the psychological toll of that's what really stands out in the sources. Ram actually said he would spend time rehearsing his expressions in the mirror every single day. He was studying his own pauses, his glances, making sure nothing, not a single hint of anything, would betray the faith he was hiding.
He's basically a method actor in his own life, constantly playing a role, fearing the slightest slip-up.
And for almost 3 years, he lived that faith in complete terrifying silence. But the need for community, it eventually forced a breakthrough. And it happened one morning with his personal driver, a Filipino man named Hassan.
Was this planned or just?
Pure chance. And an incredible moment of vulnerability. Hassan dropped his phone. Ram picks it up to return it, and he sees a single Bible verse on the lock screen. It was this instant nonverbal recognition. In that one split second, they both knew they shared the same dangerous truth.
And that moment led him into this underground network. The sources mention the name Asmol. What does that mean?
Asmol translates loosely to the small one, or the little remnant. It reflects how they saw themselves, tiny, endangered. At first, it was just 12 people, and here's the crucial part. Ram was the only Yemeni. Everyone else was a foreign worker. Filipinos, Indians, some Egyptians.
So Ram wasn't just joining some study group. He was putting himself on the front line. The consequences for a high-profile Yemeni citizen would be so much worse than for a foreign worker who could just be deported.
Oh, exponentially worse. And that's why their security was ruthless. Meetings were every 2 weeks, but the location was never the same. Always cycling through apartments, basements, they spoke in whispers, the lights were kept dim. Every single meeting felt like a victory won just through pure vigilance.
And yet the community grew. It went from 12 to almost 30 people in just 2 years. That kind of growth just dramatically increases the risk.
It did. They realized they were becoming too visible, so they had to split into smaller cells. Ram actually started leading a small group himself, and this growth was happening right as the external danger was ramping up. The religious police were stepping up raids, closing churches, arresting any foreigners suspected of proselytism. They'd be deported immediately.
But the real risk was local. The state could deport foreigners, but Ram, he was a national problem, and the sources show the net was tightening around him specifically in early 2018.
Yes. In March of that year, Ron gets the first major warning. His brother, Ferd, the government official, invites him to dinner. And Ferd is suspiciously quiet until his wife and kids leave the room.
That must have been terrifying. What did Ferd say?
He didn't accuse him directly, but the warning was clear. He talked to rumors circulating about Ram, about him welcoming foreigners into his home. The family's reputation was on the line.
And Ram's defense was a lie. He claimed he was just helping them with finance lessons. But with that kind of danger, why would they choose that moment just 3 months later to do the most provocative thing of all? A baptism.
That's the central question, isn't it? It's about conviction. The baptism was for Yasmin, a 19-year-old girl, daughter of another member. They did it in Ram's own apartment bathtub, phones off. For Ram, denying her that,
Yeah.
it felt like denying the very truth that had cost him his old life.
So it's an act of profound spiritual defiance, but it had immediate devastating fallout.
Swift and immediate. 3 days after the baptism, Ram gets a frantic call. His driver, Hassan, had been seized. The next morning, Ram is summoned to Ferd's opulent government office.
And Ferd, in his official capacity, delivers the ultimate trail. What happens?
Ferd has all the details. Hassan had broken under interrogation, confessed everything, the meetings, the books, the baptism in Ram's apartment. And Ferd's words were just brutal. He told Ram he was dead to the Al-Hassan name. The government was in damage control. They didn't want the spectacle of a public execution of a high-profile figure. So Ferd makes him an offer.
The ultimatum.
The ultimatum. He was given a choice: publicly renounce the faith, enter a re-education program, and restore his name, or face the formal legal proceedings for apostasy, which they both knew meant a death sentence.
And Ram, after 7 years of lying to protect himself, stands firm.
His refusal was stark. He just told his brother, "I cannot deny what I know to be true." And with those words, he basically accepted the end of his freedom.
Within 24 hours, he's arrested. The charges? Apostasy, proselytism, and possession of prohibited material. That material being his hidden Arabic Bible. And the interrogations begin.
And they absolutely tried to leverage his status. The main interrogator, this man in a suit, offered him what he called a calculated deal: confession, re-education, and crucially, no public humiliation. Their goal wasn't just punishment, it was submission, silencing him.
That must have been a crushing spiritual battle. Fighting for your integrity, not just your life.
But it was in the isolation of his cell that he found this unexpected source of strength. Scratched into the wall, probably with a nail, was the ichthus, the fish symbol, the ancient sign of Christianity. It was a sign that he wasn't the first one there. He wasn't alone.
And then the connection got even deeper than just a symbol. You heard tapping.
Yeah, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, SOS in Morse code. And through this agonizingly slow tapping, he connects with Ibrahim, an Egyptian professor arrested 4 months earlier. And this connection changed everything for him psychologically.
Ibrahim became his secret pastor, tapping through a wall. What were they communicating?
It was life-sustaining. Ibrahim had memorized huge sections of the Bible. He would tap out entire passages, Psalm 23, John 14, Romans 8. Ram called it his daily bread. The irony is so powerful. When everything else is stripped away, family, freedom, comfort, that's when he learned that God's presence remains.
It was also Ibrahim who confirmed the devastating news that treatment and his daughter Yasmin, the girl who was baptized, had also been taken. The cost was just multiplying.
All-consuming loss. The tribunal followed soon after. Ram was brought before the religious court. He admitted his faith. He stated clearly that he understood the penalty for apostasy was death.
The verdict was inevitable. Guilty. Execution set for 3 days later at dawn in the public square. But before that final day, he had one last agonizing encounter.
His mother was allowed to visit. And the sources describe the scene as just heartbreaking. She didn't plead for his life politically. She just begged him to lie, to just say the words, telling him, God knows your heart, implying he could comply outwardly but keep his faith inside.
And he refused.
Yeah.
Even to save his mother that grief.
He refused to deny the truth. And his mother's reaction. He said it was the deepest wound of the whole trial. Her last words to him were shattering. I no longer recognize the son I bore. That rejection was arguably more painful than the state's death sentence. He went to sleep that night preparing to die.
And this is where the story shifts. It goes from human endurance to what Ram calls outright intervention. The night before the execution, Yusuf, the youngest guard, a man who had occasionally brought him extra water, entered his cell.
And Yusuf's presence wasn't an accident. His sister had married a Filipino Christian, and Yusuf had been watching Ram's willingness to die, to refuse the easy lie from his brother. That was the final piece of evidence Yusuf needed that this faith was real. It convinced him to risk everything.
What was the plan? I mean, this sounds impossibly complex inside a guarded prison.
It was a 7-minute window. Yusuf disabled the cameras, gave Ram a guard's uniform, and a fake Omani passport. And here's the crucial thing. Yusuf knew that if Ram was discovered missing, he would likely be killed in Ram's place. The level of that sacrificial risk is just. It's almost incomprehensible.
Unbelievable. Manuel, Yusuf's brother, was waiting outside in a car.
Right. They escaped the facility, but the planned route to Oman was immediately blocked. Alerts were everywhere. They had to divert, aiming for Al Mukalla port over 500 kilometers away, try and get a boat to Somalia. And this is where the desert chase begins.
And the desert journey is where we see the two events Ram cites as, well, supernatural. First, the sandstorm.
They crashed their car when this violent, sudden sandstorm just hit them. It was total yellow darkness, a complete blackout. They were exposed, vulnerable. And then Ram saw what he described as a flickering, improbable light appear in the storm, and it guided them directly to a natural rock cave for shelter.
And the second event, when they're spotted on foot by 3 white SUVs, Yemeni forces.
They were caught. Ram and Nenwell knew it was over, but just as the soldiers got close, a sudden, violent, localized whirlwind, what the Bedouins call an aid, rose up right between them and the pursuit vehicles. It was so intense it forced the soldiers to retreat in terror, and that's how they slipped away to the port.
An utterly cinematic conclusion. So 7 years later, what are the long-term consequences? Where is Ram now? What happened to the others?
Ram eventually gained asylum in Nairobi and then settled in Toronto. He's safe. Yusuf, the guard, was imprisoned for 3 months, but incredibly, he survived. He's now safe in a neighboring country. Manuel and the sister are also safe.
So the story didn't get completely silenced. What's the impact of Ram's testimony back in Yemen?
It's massive. His story, shared through encrypted messages and audio recordings, is circulating through the underground church there. It's become a source of immense courage. And Ibrahim, the professor who tapped scripture through the wall, was eventually released.
And maybe the most unexpected ripple effect. It goes back to that intense family loss. What happened with his mother?
Ram's mother, the one who disowned him in that cell, she began a quiet, private inquiry into his faith. She has started asking questions about Jesus to a Filipino worker in her home. It's just a remarkable testament to how conviction, even at the cost of separation, can plant a seed of curiosity years later.
This whole deep dive, from the high-flying executive trading London finance for a cell wall with a fish scratched on it, to a divine whirlwind in the desert. It's an epic of surrender and hope. So what does this intense physical and spiritual trial mean for you, the listener?
Ram's story is about facing trials that strip everything away. Your desert might not be a literal sandstorm. It might have another name: chronic disease, professional betrayal, an insurmountable family struggle. But the core lesson, I think, remains. The power that sustained Ram in that prison, that lit a light in that sandstorm, is present in your struggle too.
That's the ultimate takeaway, isn't it? Even when the cost of conviction is everything you own, the outcome is an abandonment.
The sources end with the very message that sustained Ram, reinforcing the idea that persecution was turned into a future. So we'll leave you at that closing thought, echoing Jeremiah 29:11:1. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope.